We're talking about unmasking today, which is going to be a great topic. Masking for a lot of us is a way that we learn to live in the world, especially if we're undiagnosed, and we didn't have a name for what we were experiencing. And remember, you've heard me talk about this. Kids with ADHD before the age of 8, studies show that they get 20,000 more negative messages about their behavior, right? Like, why are you late? Why did you forget this? Why can't you sit still? Why are you so restless? Why are you always like only wanting to do what you want to do? Like we get all these like messages, right? And then we learn to mask our traits and that we're going to get in trouble if we are too restless or too fidgety or forget things. And so that can manifest in a lot of ways. We can get apathetic. We can also become perfectionists and go the opposite way. We can overcompensate. We can feel like we're not good enough. And we can feel like we have to hide who we are. And we have to hide who we are, which is kind of interesting. Some of you know my background, but I ran a team and we were ranked 86 in the world for Keller Williams. I was 26 years old with a business partner. And I felt like something was vastly wrong with me, that I had to hide myself. If anybody saw the real me, they'd think I was crazy, that I didn't deserve this success. Like all this stuff is wild. And so I'd go to these conferences or events and just feel like I had to hide so many parts of myself. And I just kept trying to push and do more numbers because I thought if I could compensate and do like, we were doing 350 sales a year or something. If I could hit 400, then I'd be good enough. And it would compensate for this like part of me that wasn't enough. And if you haven't done a ton of deals or you're not there yet, I'll ruin the surprise for you that if you don't feel good enough at 300 deals, you're not going to feel good at 400 or 500 or 1,000 or 20 or 100. Like no amount of deals is going to make you like fill this void that's not good enough, right? And I think for a lot of us in the first place, masking comes from this deep down like I'm not good enough and I have to hide parts of myself. And unmasking itself is a really interesting process, and we're going to talk about that as well. So really, just to define masking in a more clinical sense, is it's intentionally or sometimes unconsciously camouflaging our ADHD traits to appear more acceptable, competent, or neurotypical. Right? We're suppressing our impulses, we're suppressing things about ourselves, so then we don't get reprimanded, so we don't stick out, so we, don't get I guess like the rejection sensitivity is for you. We don't want that to get triggered. And we want to fit in, right? We want to belong. And so we're going to talk a little bit about unmasking. So that's what masking is. And so it's really especially prevalent for entrepreneurs, right? Sometimes we lack that external structure. And so our success depends on um, being able to do things or executive function or holding ourselves accountable. And we're talking to tons of people all the time and we're in offices, and part of our success deems on whether we get along with other people and whether we belong and whether they trust us. And so it's really interesting. But again, masking is not being fake, right? It's a survival strategy. So, we're trying to belong. It's not like you're inauthentic. Some people shame themselves like, oh, I've been fake. You're not being fake. Like you've learned a way of being to belong. And so there's different types of masking. So we have one is behavioral. So this might be suppressing stimming, right? With you're shaking your leg, you're chewing your pen, you're clicking something, right? The brain's chronically understimulated. And so we're suppressing stimming, which helps us regulate, fidgeting, interrupting, trying to be quiet, those things. So we might be suppressing that. Cognitive. So type of masking for cognitive is like we might be over preparing. Um, we might be rehearsing what you're going to say or what you're going to do over and over again. We might even be like editing our speech mid-sentence or apologizing and having trouble getting across what we want to say because we're scared we're not going to say it in the right way because we're too direct or we're too blunt or we're too impatient, right? So we're doing all these things cognitively. This is another one, is you might get somewhere really, really early, right? If you're masking because your time blindness is really rough, you have really poor time management, you might get somewhere really early all the time because you're chronically late, right? Social, people pleasing is a way of masking, mirroring others' tone or energy, hiding emotional overwhelm. You might be dissociated, but people don't know. You don't tell people, but mirroring their tone and energy. So you might be um, like the people around you might be copying, or you might be taking on their opinions or their thoughts about things just to belong instead of saying, "Ooh, I don't know if that's right," right? And then professional masking, overcommitting. So taking on way too much that you can't do, but you don't want to say no. Perfectionism, being the fixer, if you relate to any of these. So being the fixer, overcommitting, taking on a bunch of responsibility, trying to people, yeah, like people pleasing can mix in with the professional as well. So again, like these can all be masking to try to hide our traits or to try to compensate for feeling not good enough, even though we are, right? Social conditioning, especially if sometimes gender roles, some ADHD traits are more acceptable in boys and not girls, and then vice versa. Sometimes big emotions or getting emotional or having crying or meltdowns might not be as acceptable for men. Whereas like women, fidgeting and roughhousing and moving might not be as, or the hyperactive might not be as acceptable, right? You might have trauma. We're more likely to have trauma because of our sensitive nervous systems and not trusting ourselves. So trauma can make us feel like we're not enough, or we're hard to manage, or we're too much, and then we have the economic and survival pressure. So there's a lot of reasons that we mask, and there's a lot of different ways that we mask. In all of this, it's really important to have compassion for ourselves, and that it's a survival technique, right? So the interesting thing with masking is that it also has a toll. So masking is suppressing stuff, suppressing impulses. And let me ask, who here feels like they mask or have masked before? Who feels like they do that? Okay. So it's there's a toll to that. And so that can really task our executive function, because if we're suppressing impulses, which if we're suppressing stimming, and that's the thing we need to regulate our brain, but we're not letting ourselves do that, then it can start to like drain our fuel tank, right? So if you're masking at a high level, if you can't be yourself and just relax and unmask, sometimes it can actually pull on your memory, like your working memory. So you might feel like your memory is not as great. If you're drained because you're constantly masking your environment, you can't be yourself, or you're not being authentic in your business, and you're constantly double checking your tone, your words, your posture, how you're saying things, that can take energy away. Time blindness. So hyperfixating, being a perfectionist, all those, that can make time blindness worse. And then inhibiting our emotions or not letting ourselves express things, or if we have big emotions, we don't know how to handle it, that can drain us as well. So that there's a task in just draining our executive function, right? Our fuel tank is lower because we're using fuel to suppress impulses and cover up what we want to do, which is talk really fast or interrupt people or stim or move, or all these things our brains might need to do to regulate. It can also cause a workflow disruption. So if you're perfectionist with emails and it's got to be perfect, and you're scared, or meetings or launches of a product or a brand, and we think, oh, I've got to make this perfect because this, that can do that. We might avoid reaching out or following up as we don't want to be rejected by being authentic, but we just can't be fake right now, so we do nothing. Or if you're switching between multiple personas, right? If you have, has anybody heard about this, like a customer service voice versus your regular voice? Have you heard about that? Okay, so it might be a little bit for women, I think, because again, some of these gender expectations that are just silly, where I think as guys sometimes we can get away with being more direct and not being like nice, where it's like, oh, hey, yeah, we can help you, we got this, right? Whereas if a woman's like, hey, we can help you, we got that, like it might come across as rude. So it just depends. But if you have a customer service voice, if you're doing lead gen, and it takes energy and you feel like you're not yourself because you've got to elevate your tone or have more fluctuation or seem really, really nice or seem really enthused and happy, and you're actually more of an even keel, calm person, that can be exhausting. So finding a way to do lead gen that's authentic can be really helpful. Because sometimes the resistance to lead gen is because you just can't be fake that day, or you just can't mask, right? So there's just a lot of things, like you can crash, there's energy, right? And there's just a lot of cost to masking. It can drain us. And then if you build something, you'll see this, because I've worked, right, I've been in the top teams, and this is kind of interesting. But there are people that are at the top in our industry that are exactly themselves. And then there are other people that when you get close to them behind closed doors, they're not their persona. Um, and it's really interesting because at what point do they unmask and then risk losing everything they built? I don't know if that makes sense. So I might articulate this a little bit better. um, when you build, okay, so somebody's clapping. So I think some people are getting it because I've been with like top people in industries and conferences, and I've been around people, and there are some people that you see them on social media, and it's like, oh, this is them. I feel like I know them. And then other people, it's like, oh, this is not you at all. You are not high energy. You are not this. And it's exhausting. And it's actually really sad. And I've coached some people like that because they're terrified. They've built this empire and then they're terrified of actually being themselves because they've built their whole brand and their following and everything on this persona that's not them. And you'll find this. So I've actually coached celebrities with ADHD in Hollywood, and I've signed NDAs as one would, so I can't drop names, but you'll find that in Hollywood. There's a persona, especially in the music industry, of what they built, and that's not them at all. And they just want it. This is not someone I've coached, but this is someone who's said this publicly, like Katy Perry. She's like, I just want to be Katy Perry sometimes instead of this like person that wears dresses and does all this stuff. So, anyways, long story short, building a business based on authenticity is going to give you more energy because at some point it gets exhausting. And if you built something for so long on something that's not authentic and then you start to unmask, it can be terrifying. And you might lose business or you might gain business, you know? But it's just more and more about finding lead gen that makes sense. Not feeling like you've got to create social media videos and be this person, like really finding a way that's in alignment with who you are and how you operate and what your values are is going to be so much more sustainable. Or you may hit a wall, right? If you're constantly doing lead gen that doesn't feel good and using scripts that feel salesy and that's not you, you're either going to hit a wall and not want to do it, or you're just going to burn out. There's just some of that I wanted to, and we're going to talk about unmasking and what that looks like too. Masking is just not great, but it helped us survive, right? It was a survival mechanism, and we want to thank it for whatever environment we're in where we might have needed it. And now we want to start to shift that, right? Because we want to get you out of burnout. We want to get you out of just like being unmotivated. Because right when we're in alignment, who's that? When you're in alignment with your values and you're really helping people, and it's like fun and it's in your special interests. I mean, do you need to get motivated? Do you have to watch inspirational videos in the morning? If you love what you're doing, you don't have to do that stuff. You don't have to like you wake up motivated. And then we have that ability with ADHD because we have the brain of extremes, right? So we're either not really into it or we're like on it. That's most of us. And so if you're having to do all these things to get motivated in the morning, you can, but it might be that there's something in your day that's just not in alignment or not exciting, or you're not making it new enough, or you need to shift it, you need to switch it up to create more dopamine, and then you're not going to have to take hours and hours to get motivated in the morning. This can be life-changing to unmask. It really can. And then also what I'll say too, lastly with masking, is when you're masking all day and you're exhausted and then you get home and then you need to be around your family, you could be so depleted that you're irritable, you can't feed yourself, you can't do laundry, like you're just exhausted, right? So masking was really interesting. Unmasking can actually really be scary too. And so I'm painting the picture of the pain because some people it's really hard to take that off and to stop masking. And so it's important when we're unmasking to interrogate reality on what the cost is, and then you can weigh out that versus the cost of unmasking, you know, and what that might look like. So part of unmasking really is like being yourself, right? And allowing yourself to fidget and owning that. Does anybody have any examples of what they mask around, what they've been masking or what they've masked in the past? Type it in the comments. What have you masked before? Is it being extra early so you're not late? Is it suppressing when you want to move or fidget to get up from a meeting? So it's so interesting. Our brain is understimulated, right? It's chronically understimulated. So fidgeting, a lot of us got reprimanded for that. A lot of us got criticism around that growing up. Like, why can't you sit still? Like, why are you moving? Right. And like if you're sitting next to somebody who's constantly fidgeting, it can be distracting. And if you have ADHD, there's a 50% chance your parents have ADHD. So it might have been distracting for them or they didn't understand it. Fidgeting and stimming is so good for our nervous system. It's so good for us. It's regulating, it's self-soothing. Our brain says, I'm understimulated. So I'm going to do this little activity that's going to bring up the stimulation in my brain, a little bit of dopamine to keep me regulated. Because if we don't, so those of us that mentioned like sitting still, if you sit still and you don't let yourself stim and you sit there for hours, then what happens? If I move, I have this label or it's not good or I get criticized or things like that. So what can happen, and it's not always, but more often women get that a little bit harsher from what the research shows of it's less appropriate because we can roughhouse as boys or it's, oh, he's just hyperactive, sit still. But especially women are more likely to get late diagnosed if they're even diagnosed. And physical stimming, right, moving around can help regulate our brain. So if we take away, this, if you haven't heard me say this, this might blow your mind because it blew mine and a lot of people. If we take away the physical stimming, you still stim, but it's up here. So what happens is you get racing thoughts, rumination, negative thinking. So our brain, when we're understimulated, we can actually get addicted to negative thoughts because negative thoughts are compelling, right? And they create endorphins, which also creates dopamine, and that's what the brain's trying to create. So if we remove all of our stimming and our fidgeting and our restlessness, and then our brain says, well, we still need to regulate because we're going to get super, like, have you had that where you feel so bored, you feel like you're going to die? Like you just get dysregulated, you get depressed, like nothing left. So our brain's constantly trying to help us, like kind of manually. So we start to think negatively. And that's why if you go for a walk and now, oh my gosh, I feel better, right? Like the brain needed that. It needed like the dopamine. So when we pull away those stems, we can really get stuck in some thought patterns that aren't great. Because the whole time the brain's just trying to help us. So I say this too because as a coach, right, I've done over 10,000 one-on-one calls. I get people that come to me that say they're negative. Oh, I have all this negative thinking, like it's their fault, like it's their problem. And we start unmasking and we start incorporating things that create dopamine. And now the thoughts can settle because the brain's just starving for dopamine and it's going to get it if you don't get it, give it to it, right? So it's like this shame, like, oh, I'm a negative thinker. And I just want to name that. You're not negative if you have that. Your brain is trying to help you. It's trying the best it can, and it just doesn't always understand some of the logic. It means, oh, negative thought, dopamine, compelling. Now we're satiated. We can regulate because that's better than bottoming out. So if you have a ton of rumination, yes, we can have depression. Yes, we can have OCD. We're more likely to have all those. And it is interesting to incorporate healthy dopamine to see if that can ease some of that up versus just being positive, right? Or changing your thinking. We want to look at it like a deeper level. So these are ways people mask people pleasing and second guessing everything I'm saying, being social when I don't want to be. When I get a call, I know as a lead, I put on that big customer service voice, agreeing to help because I actually want to without understanding my own limitations, apologizing, monitoring my movement, all the above, being the class clown, I tune out. Countless ways of masking. I'd rather pace in the back of a meeting and I have to plan to show up at least 15 minutes early just to arrive on time. Pretty low key person most times, and that doesn't excite the algorithm so many more. Can't pay attention. Yeah, having hard. Yeah, exactly. So when we do all this stuff, we can't pay attention because the brain's like, okay, we're going to take away all the we're going to mask, we're taking away these stems. So now our thoughts are going to run. So you're sitting in a training, the lights are bright, you're trying to block that out, somebody's chewing gum, you're uncomfortable in your chair, you can't fidget, you can't move. So then the brain starts having all these ruminating thoughts, right? And you're trying to block out all the other stimulus. How are you going to pay attention to what they're teaching? And then you feel like you don't retain stuff or you get in trouble in school. Like, duh, right? Like, none of this is adaptable to us because we're only 3 to 8% of the population. So then we think we're not smart. Anybody have that? You feel like you're not smart? You think that in school? You think you were smart? You're not good at school, right? It's like, of course, if you were at a rock concert and then you're trying to hear a teacher talk, you're not going to retain the information. And so when we remove that, we allow ourselves to stim, we remove the distractions, right? And maybe we do 1 hour of the class or we put on, I mean, I've done this before. When I stopped masking, I'd wear sunglasses, I'd wear noise canceling headphones, I'd bring a fidget toy, and I'd go to trainings. And then all of a sudden, some of the other coaches started doing that too because they saw it was okay to unmask. But it's unmasking is about owning it, right? It's recognizing what it is, understanding the logic, and not being embarrassed about it. Um, and some people, right, when you unmask, may not be a fit anymore. Like it may not be a fit, right? Especially with friends. If you start talking faster and it might be too fast for them, and you might decide you want a little bit more neurodivergent friends too, so you don't have to suppress your speech patterns, or when you're have you ever had that with another neurodivergent person and you're talking and you're interrupting each other, but it's not like a negative thing. You're just bouncing from thing to thing, conversation to conversation. And you just know there's like a pattern to it. It's really cool. So somebody says their mind is blown, right? Isn't that just fascinating about school? And like, this is all the stories. So you have this brilliant kid whose brain thinks differently, who gets reprimanded 20,000 more negative messages by the age of 8, that then is suppressing your stimming, right? And so you're sitting in school, so you've been told that you're not good enough and something's wrong with you, and why can't you be like this person or whatever? And then on top of that, like we can't pay attention because there's a rock concert going on, and then we think we're not good, we're not smart, we don't belong, and like we can't even do well in school, and then here we are. And then we have executive function challenges, right? Because we're drained from masking. So it's just wild. When we're unmasking, really what this is, it's like being authentic and really learning like who we are and allowing that. And when you're unmasking, it's probably not going to be all at once. It might be you're going to test the waters a tiny bit, especially if you've been doing this your whole life, right? So if you're used to people pleasing and overcommitting and saying yes to everything, it's going to be really scary to say no, and you might start little, and that's okay. So I have a mental health background too. We don't necessarily need to flood the system where all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is me, screw you. Like you can. But it's okay to test the water and for it to be a process. And normally it is for people is to slowly unmask and see that we're not getting rejected. Or sometimes your friendships might shift, or people in your life might say, hey, you're being a lot more direct lately. Is everything okay? You might get that, and they just see a change, and you say, yes, like trying to be more direct. Like, I'd love your support. So it's normal. It's also normal um, to grieve how you've been masking most of your life. To grieve what now that you see it's okay to unmask, it's like grieving the old life and how hard that was to hold that up for so long, grieving some of the stuff like sometimes things get worse before they get better. If you stop masking, all of a sudden you might have a little bit of a collapse because it's like you ran a marathon and finally you crossed the end, and now you're like, oh my gosh, my leg is sore, my rib is out a little bit. So there can almost be like it gets worse before it gets better because you're finally resting, you're finally giving yourself a break. And it's this deeper level of awareness. And like there can be exhaustion that comes with it. But then you come out the other side and it's really amazing. So that's some of the benefits. But you're gonna stop when you start unmasking, you're gonna start to feel your energy coming back. So once you get that break, if you need it to just unmask, your energy is gonna come back, but it's gonna be more organic instead of you having to like fight for it all the time or create all this pain and pressure. You're gonna stop being as tired. You're going to see your passion coming back. Your motivation's going to be coming back. You get out of burnout. You're going to have more confidence. The the confidence that comes with exposing your authentic self and seeing that that's okay and standing in it, the confidence that comes with that is just unshakable. Um, because when you feel like you're hiding something all the time, you're reserved, you're not fully sharing yourself. And somebody mentioned Brene Brown earlier, but vulnerability and authenticity is the thing that gets us the most love. It gets us the most business, right? Like if you have some super formal, kind of post that's not have a lot of vulnerability, you might not get as much interaction. But what about when you post and like you might be having a hard time, or it's an opinion on something, or something's bothering you, or you're being vulnerable, whatever, you're gonna get tons of people on that, right? So unmasking is at first sometimes it'd be scary because you think there's gonna be rejection and you're not gonna belong, but ultimately you're gonna have deeper relationships and you're gonna feel more love. But it's a process. And so just being patient, going the pace that feels good, but it's going to improve your stronger self-worth, more authentic relationships. You're going to have higher capacity. Your mental health is going to get better. And there's just a lot of really wonderful things about it. So really, we want to get in alignment with ourselves. That's what I have for today on unmasking. Thank you again for being here. So we'll see you in the Facebook groups or in the messages, and have a wonderful day of unmasking.